Hello, I am Professor Kino, and welcome to my Office of Cinematic Antiquity. Today we will be talking about... Okay, It Chapter 2, probably one of the most anticipated horror films of all time. It Chapter 1 was such a hit that it broke box office records and infiltrated pop culture. Red balloons haven't been the same since. And because of this, the anticipation for the sequel began to rise. Boy, the anticipation. It was outrageous. So much so that the expectations put on It Chapter 2 were akin to a Star Wars film or an Avengers film, complete with fan videos and speculation, wants and desires. It was nuts. People were excited for this film, to put it lightly. All of this in addition to the fact that the last adaptation of this part of the It story, part 2 of the 1998 miniseries, isn't great, made the whole endeavor seem destined to collapse under the weight of itself and its anticipation. However, did it end up toppling over like a top-heavy tower of cards, or did it stand strong and actually live up to the aforementioned hype? Premise. 27 years after the Losers Club seemingly defeated Pennywise, a new string of disappearances and deaths that can only be his doing calls the group back to their hometown of Derry in order to confront that dastardly, shape-shifting, child-devouring, demonic clown one final time.
Hello.
Writing. Sequels are always tough to make, especially when they are the second film based on the other half of a singular 1100-page book that contains such insanity as the Cosmic Turtle Maturin. What? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that writing this film couldn't have been easy. Space reptiles aside, this film's story had to reintroduce the Losers Club, show us what they're like as adults, bring them all back to Derry, reunite them, showcase some Pennywise chicanery that is at least equivalent to the Pennywise chicanery of Chapter 1, and wrap up the entire story in a satisfying way. And in addition to this, the filmmakers also decided to fill in some of the gaps of Chapter 1 and explain the origins and mythos of Pennywise. It's a lot. This film is ambitious. Overly so. Why do I say this? Well, for one, in order to do everything that this film is trying to do, it relies heavily on flashbacks. And these can sometimes come off as strange here, particularly because a lot of them are of moments that occurred during the events of the first film, however, they were never featured in the first film, even though they are pertinent to the plot of the second chapter, so it feels odd that we never saw these sequences in the initial chapter. Maybe it was a conscious decision to reinforce the fact that people who leave Derry slowly lose their memories of it, so we get to quote-unquote remember some forgotten memories with the adult characters. But they can feel a little forced, because their implementation makes it feel like the film is forcing the plot in a direction for convenience sake, and not because it's the natural direction to go given what the plot has shown us prior to the flashbacks. Additionally, the film also has a tendency to feel segmented. A major part of the plot is that each character has to go off on their own to find a personal item from their past, and each of these moments plays out similarly. Character wanders around, they remember things of their past, they remember some run-in with Pennywise, which we never got to see in Chapter 1 for some reason, then they have a new run-in with Pennywise, get their item, and then regroup with the others. And while each of these sequences is crafted expertly, from their atmospheres to their tension building to their scares to their plain entertainment value, they can come off as a little repetitive. And as the film goes on, it can sometimes feel like, okay, where is the plot going exactly, and what's the end goal? And the combination of the flashbacks and the segmentation and the main plot itself does give the whole film a pacing issue, and it can feel a little jumbled. From what I have read, the initial cut of this film was more than 4 hours long, and I can believe it, because even though the theatrical version does come in at a whopping 2 hours and 50 minutes, it does feel like there might be some stuff missing. But for some reason, the whole thing clicks despite this, and the experience as a whole becomes more than the sum of its parts. And that's saying a lot, because each part by itself is wonderful. And this success all stems from the characters, the losers themselves. They, as in Bill, Beverly, Richie, Stanley, Mike, Eddie, and Ben, are the main reason that most of us fell in love with this story initially, and seeing them all reunite as adults and spending time with them feels like we are reuniting with old friends once again ourselves. And even though, since most of the characters have to sacrifice precious screen time to make way for everyone else's collectathon segment, the development of the adult versions of the losers isn't too in-depth, each of them gets enough time to make you care about them again. And the directions that the story takes some of the characters is so powerful and emotional and surprising that it floored me. For one, each of the characters' fears in this film are a lot more mature than their fears as kids. And I don't mean that, like, Pennywise turns into a tax collector or something, but like domestic abuse, guilt, shame. And it really hit close to home, to be honest. But it's even more than this. There are just some really amazing character moments that make each loser feel even more layered. And in the end, even though the plot can be a little jumbled and the pacing can be a little off, It Chapter 2 still ends the It storyline in a great way that does the seemingly impossible: live up to the massive expectations laid out for it. Also, I have heard that director Andy Muschietti has plans on making a 6+ hour long It supercut that combines both films, adds in deleted scenes, and adds in some scenes that haven't even been shot yet. And I am so ready for it, because I think if the two films are edited together well and missing scenes are incorporated, it will fix all the issues that I have with the writing presented in the theatrical cut. Acting. The acting here is phenomenal across the board. I really need to give credit to Rich Delia, the casting director, for finding adult actors who not only look like their child counterparts, but that have the acting ability to also embody their child counterparts, to capture their essence. And every single actor here does that, not just Bill Hader, as some other critics will have you believe. Jessica Chastain is the adult Beverly, James McAvoy is the adult Bill, Isaiah Mustafa is the adult Mike, Jay Ryan is the adult Ben, James Ransone is the adult Eddie, Andy Bean is the adult Stanley, and Bill Hader is the adult Richie. I was just astounded while watching this film. It is seamless. However, yes, Bill Hader is as good as everyone has been saying, even more so if I'm being honest. Not only does he look like what an adult Finn Wolfhard Richie would look like, but he also acts just like him too. When he is on screen, he isn't Bill Hader, he is just Richie. And he was able to make me laugh my ass off and tear up with sadness, sometimes simultaneously. Everyone here is just so good. Losers aside, there are two other characters that deserve recognition. First is, of course, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. He nailed the role in the first film, and he does it again here. He is terrifying, mesmerizing, and brilliant. Iconic. I could watch him in this role for hours on end and not get bored. Also, Teach Grant as the adult Henry Bowers, aka Bully from the Losers' childhood, doesn't get as much to do as I thought he was going to, but he is definitely memorable as an insane murderous bully. His acting does come off as being very strange and funny, but it kinda worked. And finally, all of the actors who played the kid versions of the Losers, Jaeden Martell, Wyatt Oleff, Jack Dylan Grazer, Finn Wolfhard, Sophia Lillis, Chosen Jacobs, and Jeremy Ray Taylor, are back, and they are just as excellent here as they were the last time we saw them. Oh, and I also want to recognize Javier Botet for all of his magnificent body acting here. He acts out two of Pennywise's transformations, and his body horror work is magnificent. He actually creeps his way into a lot of films, but because he is always covered in prosthetics or CGI, you probably never notice him. But he really does deserve recognition for his work, because his performances always elevate the scenes he's in, and he does the same here. Costumes, hair, and makeup. The costumes here do what they should, define each character that they don. Whether it be Richie's shaggy clothes, Bill's casual Friday-like clothes, Ben's fancy clothes, or Beverly's stylish clothes, each character's life and personality is imprinted on them with their wardrobes, and they work well and just add to each character's already present layers. A step above this, however, is Pennywise himself. He is so good, he looks creepy and just plain superb. When you think of a scary freaking clown, he is like the number one thing you'd probably think of. He is designed excellently. Set design. Each set is super atmospheric and plain exquisite. They are like perfectly constructed horror paintings. Not only are they full of wonderfully horrifying imagery, but there is so much of this imagery that I'm sure I'll see new things every time I rewatch the film. Each set helps to bring the film's atmosphere, one seeping with dread and suspense, to life perfectly, and there is such a variety of sets that it is even more wonderful. Mental hospitals, sewers, dilapidated houses, hotels, creepy basements, cluttered apartments, underground clubhouses, Chinese restaurants, movie sets, and even more. The sets really help to bring the film to life and make the story's expansiveness tangible. Choreography. There is some really great horror action on display here. While so many horror films of late focus in on wandering down creepy hallways and running from things, this film goes a step beyond that. Yes, there is still plenty of wandering and running, but there are also legitimate struggles and fights. Not like hardcore action fights, but still. And they all fit with this film and are entertaining. Whether the action is against some creepy headcrab thing, Henry Bowers, or Pennywise the Clown himself, the action here is very tense, effective, and, to put it simply, excellently done as horror films go. Cinematography. This film has some pretty gorgeous cinematography. Each scene is shot so well that the scares always succeed in producing terror, which is very difficult to do. From the way that the camera pans to the position of various items and characters to just the framing as a whole, each scene that sought to evoke fear did so wonderfully. While some of that was because of the acting and the sets and the music, a big chunk of it was made through the way that each scene was filmed. Wonderful stuff. But there was even more than that here. Some shots, even when they aren't horror related, are just works of art. This film is beautiful and scary, the perfect combination for this story. Editing. There are so many great scene transitions here. Panning up to the stars and then zooming in to see that there are missing puzzle pieces, then zooming through them into a new scene. Dripping blood and then panning until it is dripping water in a new scene. Having the adult version of one of the characters fade into their child version. Creative, original, fantastic. In addition to this, though, there was a lot of transitioning between modern day and the past using flashbacks. Sometimes multiple ones in one scene. And a lot of the time it just involved fade-ins and fade-outs. And that can feel a little clunky and jarring. It gets the necessary story out, but I just wish that the flashbacks were implemented in better ways like some of the other scene transitions. CGI. While a good chunk of people have been complaining that the CGI can be bad and that the de-aging is awful, I didn't find it that bad. While the CGI is definitely not the highlight of the film, and compared to some recent films the CGI here is just good, it still worked. It is creepy when it needs to be, such as with Naked Grandma, a head crab looking like it was straight out of John Carpenter's The Thing, a disfigured leper, and a bunch of other stuff. Again, it isn't mind-blowing, but it is perfectly suitable. And just remember people, the budget of this film isn't huge. While it is around double the size of It Chapter 1, a lot of the new money went to, most assuredly, the relatively high-profile cast. So it is just a middle-budget movie, and due to that fact, the CGI is quite good. Music. I really dug this horror soundtrack. While so many horror films of late have fallen back on the simple, but admittedly effective spooky string music, It Chapter 2 combines more orchestral spooky music with legitimate action-adventure style music, and at times uplifting and sometimes saddening beautiful drama music. It's a very unique mix of stuff, but it really works, so kudos to Benjamin Wallfisch for crafting a memorable set of tunes for this film. Direction. Andy Muschietti really came up to bat for this one. While the final edited version of the story can be a little jumbled, the ambition and talent on display is clear. Muschietti has a keen eye for horror. He knows how to build tension, create atmosphere, and deliver the perfect scares. As a horror auteur, he is creative and stylish. It is clear that the It project has really taught him a lot, and I can't wait to see what he puts his mind to next. My enjoyment. I thought It Chapter 2 was brilliant. When I was watching it, I was so engrossed that I didn't even feel the almost 3-hour runtime. In fact, I wanted more, which is why I really want to see whatever director's cuts and supercuts that Muschietti has up his talented sleeves. This film made me laugh, cry, and tense up in fear. I loved it. Such a perfect horror experience to start off the autumn film season. Recommendations. If you are a huge fan of It Chapter 1, particularly if you love the characters from that film, then you are sure to love It Chapter 2. While the story has a bit of a pacing issue and can feel a little jumbled at times, the way that it uses its characters and wraps up the whole story is wonderful. It's perfect for every horror fan because the skill put into the costumes, makeup, music sets, atmosphere, acting, cinematography, and everything else is stupendous. This film is an event that any character-driven horror fan should love. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like. If you want to add anything, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I am Professor Kino, and I look forward to our next discussion.